Hi, this is Craig Seeman. This is the Green Party Animal Rights Committee live stream, and I'm here with my co-host and Animal Rights Committee co-chair Mary Lawrence and guest Michael Battey. Let me talk a little bit about how I got to this place and where I am with the Green Party. In 1992, in late 92, I had already been a vegetarian, not yet vegan, for about 6 or 7 years, and a cat, Sydney, walked into my life, literally walked into the living room and sat down. The front door was open, and he invited himself in. And in that time, I began to rethink my relationship with animals and the earth. I mean, I had already been a vegetarian for a number of years, so I was sort of conscious, but the actual connection began with me by connecting with an animal in my adult life and seeing how we needed that kind of a relationship. At least I felt we did. And it was during that period that I made my exodus from the Democratic Party to the Green Party. What happened for me is I felt the need to express this connection of animals, ecology, sustainability, social justice, and I found a lot of that was peripheral in the Democratic Party, and yet it was extremely important to me personally. What happened is I decided that there was no significant Green Party where I was in New York City at that point, and I decided I had to build this thing. And I decided I had been involved with the local community board parks committee and began to get involved in fighting for dog runs. Now, mind you, these are companion animal issues, but I think connecting compassion is a big thing. And with this involvement with the community, I decided that I should run for office. And in 1994, a friend of mine and I he ran in Manhattan, I ran in Brooklyn, New York City. And we were the first two Greens in New York City to run for office. And coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, both of us were vegetarians at the time. So our outlook on life integrated into our politics, and other people who were vegetarians and vegans began to approach us. A magazine published locally to me, Satya magazine, interviewed us and asked about this because the Green Party, at least in New York City, was very new. So the concept, other than what people had read about and the general public hadn't, is what was going on in Europe with the Green Party. So there was a keen interest in this, in putting this thing together. And with that, I ran for office several more times, and also got involved with Viva Veggie, and was handing out someone who became a friend of mine, a flyer she wrote called 101 Reasons Why I Became a Vegetarian. And with that, I found the Green Party as a comfortable home for me, and since then began to build the interconnection between animals, ecology, social justice, economics, and which led me down to the path to where we are today with the Animal Rights Committee. And with that, Mary Lawrence, the Animal Rights Committee co-chair, will continue.
Thank you, Craig, and welcome everybody. Good to be here tonight. I'll tell you a little bit about my story and a little bit about the history of the Animal Rights Committee. For me, I've been vegan for 20 years, and it was initially about health reasons. Then the more I learned about animal issues and animal agriculture and the environment, it became really the focus was ethical issues. And I discovered the Green Party as a result of that as well. I knew of Ralph Nader. He was really the person that got me interested in the Green Party and the social justice issues that he spoke about and workers' rights. And it all seemed to go together. So I've been involved with the Green Party, and to me, the only piece that seemed to be missing was a platform on animal rights. So about, let's see, what was it, 2016, we worked together first in Connecticut, which is where I'm based, to form a local chapter of the Animal Rights Committee, and then worked on, and then I somehow got connected with Craig, I think by just making a post on the Green Party Facebook page saying, are there any other vegans in the Green Party? And Craig was one of the ones that responded. So, and then we just, through our conversations, decided that we really needed to form the Animal Rights Committee to have this issue be one that's recognized as a social justice issue within the Green Party, and that is addressed on a national level as well as state level and local. So I work in Connecticut building coalitions, and that's what Michael will be talking about tonight, is building coalitions with local groups. Connecticut, we have Connecticut Votes for Animals. We also have representatives from other national nonprofits that we work with to try to pass legislation and public policy in support of animals. So that's what interested us in getting Michael involved. Michael Battey is our guest tonight. He's president of the nonprofit Vegan for Life. He's part of the radio collective Vegan World Radio, which airs in Houston on KPFT. And he's a member of the Harris County Green Party, where he's working on establishing an animal rights caucus, and he'll speak a little bit about that as well. But Vegan for Life spreads the vegan message and raises awareness about animal agriculture's destructive impact on the environment. And that's a big piece of the work that he will be speaking about tonight. Hopefully getting other people that are listening involved and interested in this kind of work as well. And I certainly want to say, I want to open up this conversation we're having here to comments and questions for anyone that might be listening in. So please post your comments on the Facebook page, and I'll be checking them, and we'll be responding to them later in the evening. So first of all, Michael, welcome. We're really happy to have you as a guest. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself to begin?
Well, I mostly grew up in Houston. I've traveled around a little bit. I lived in France and Japan, and I've done a good amount of traveling. And part of the reason I got interested in veganism actually started in my interest with the environment, and also some social justice issues related to the environment. I had the opportunity of traveling around in the Amazon in Brazil for a while, and I just saw the horrible destruction there, and also the criminality. You know, they would just kill people. These cattle ranchers, you know, there's Chico Mendes, who is a famous, you know, protester against the ranchers, and he himself got killed. And in Japan as well, I did some environmental activism. We are trying to stop the logging in Sarawak and Sabah in Indonesia. That was all being imported into Japan. And so really my background is more related to environmentalism than it is to veganism and animal rights. Here back in Houston, I've been vegan for about 8 years. And at first it was just very simple. I was eating too much steak and chicken. And I thought, well, if I didn't buy the steak and the chicken, I'd eat more veggies, you know. And it was as simple as that. And then over that next year, you know, I ended up being completely vegan, probably just through associating with vegans, you know. And the social aspect is so important. Like I was leafleting at University of Houston today, and people who want to get involved, you know, want to become vegans, but they don't have any vegan friends. I tell them, you know, oh, join this group or that group, because that's really a key thing. So once I got involved in this vegan group, I was still very environment oriented, And I was shocked to learn that most of these people in the group I was associated with were much more animal rights oriented. And I really didn't know much about it at the time. And of course, I've read the books, you know, and now I understand it all. Now it's very important to me. And as this time went along, I started studying more and more, especially when I started doing the radio show that I would have guests and I'd make a point of reading the books by the guests. And so I learned quite a bit doing that.
Yeah, so the Vegan World Radio, how long have you been doing that and what made you start working on that project?
Well, I started doing it just because the opportunity presented itself. A friend invited me to come on his show. He had seen my environmental, you know, I do presentations on the environmental impact of animal agriculture. And he had a slot for me to come in and talk about that subject. And shortly thereafter, he resigned. He had been doing it a long time and he had different things he wanted to do. So I was able to move into his slot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the opportunity, that sounds like it happened for a reason to get that.
Yeah, so, and that'll be kind of a theme going along here. It's just a matter of taking advantage of opportunities, saying yes to opportunities, you know.
That's really good. So when you got involved, you said you did some presentations. What was the audience for those presentations and how were those received?
Well, when I first started doing them, it was just preaching to the choir. There's a great group here in Houston called Vegan Society of Peace. It's quite large and they have big potlucks every month and there's always some kind of show or presentation at the end. And I did, gosh, about 6 presentations for them about various topics. And I love doing it partially because it makes me keep up with the science, you know, which is a challenge. And I love researching, so I did a lot of that. And I kind of prepared this standard animal ag presentation, you know, and I've done it for that group. I've done it at the Veg Fest that this group, Vegan Society of Peace, put on. And I've also done it at universities, colleges, high schools, churches, and various other places. And I really enjoyed doing it because it's, first, the impact is so huge and people never ever hear about it or very little. It's starting to come out more now, like Time Magazine had something, even Fortune Magazine and Forbes had something about it. And but by and large, people are very, very clueless about the impact that animal agriculture has on the planet. And I felt it was very important for people to be exposed to that. Strangely, a lot of times people still kind of, you show it all to them and it takes a while to sink in, I think. Right at the end of the presentation, they're like, people ask me if I recycle or something. I've just gone through all these things. Right. And, but in general, I think it's just very important to make known these things that are generally hidden.
I was going to say, I'm going to jump in and say, I think it's the idea of disbelief. People probably think, how can that go on? How can that be allowed? I teach English part-time also, and when I tell my students about this, they say, is that allowed? Is that legal? And I'm like, it's perfectly legal, but they're like, how can that be? Because no, it's just that, you have that immediate reaction of this can't be true, this can't be allowed. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe is that any of your experience, or Craig, what were you thinking?
Yeah, why do you think people have such a difficult time grasping it? What do you think the block is? I mean, do people come up to you, as you made a comment about the do you recycle or something like that? What is the great divide that you're finding since you've been speaking about it?
Perhaps some of it is just the fact that they've never been exposed to it before. They've never been told about it before, they get information from commercials and from industry, you know, and they still think, you know, the chickens are out on the field picking grains off the ground, you know, and the roosters are cock-a-doodle-dooing, you know, out there, and I don't know, and also agriculture generally is far away from where most people live, so people don't generally see it, and especially they don't see factory farms because, except for perhaps chicken farms, it's hard to even get close to them, you know. In North Carolina, where they have all the pig farms, they, you know, they're all lined with trees, and I think you really have to go out of your way to see one. It's easy to smell one, but hard to see one.
It's almost as if in outside of those kind of communities, it's been commodified to the extent that people buy product. Chicken is something that's a thing you get in the store or in a fast food place. They don't connect it with an animal, and certainly don't connect it with what the animal went through to get there.
Yeah.
You know,
well, of course, they always present the animals as being happy that you're buying their body parts, you know, and every commercial seems, the only exception is the eat more chicken one, you know, that one is exposing a little bit of truth there, that the cows don't want to be eaten, but that's the general theme, you know, in a lot of these commercials, that the cows are so happy that you want to kill them and eat them.
Right.
As if they're there to perform service to us. It reminds me of the scene in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Restaurant at the End of the Universe, where the cow comes out and talks to the patrons and saying, which part of me would you like to eat, you know, basically. Mm-hmm. And I can say for myself that I even you know, because I was a vegetarian for actually many years before I became a vegan, which is only about 3 years ago or so, and I was victim of happy cow syndrome. If you don't actually witness it, it's a distant thing. You have this bucolic image of what a farm is, and then of course even those bucolic farms aren't really bucolic. It's like, you know, how pleasant can death row be if you're still on death row?
Yeah.
Well, and there's that myth, not only like the happy cow, but it's the idea that the cow is giving you milk, not that we're stealing milk, that it's the language that's used around farming that also makes that exploitation almost invisible. But really, we're stealing, we're killing, we have to be honest with the words that we use. And most people don't even want to think about it that way.
Yeah, and for the environmental thing, and talking about the presentations, I don't think many people grasp the scale of it, you know, like how almost 9 billion chickens are slaughtered every year in this country. It's just crazy, you know, 350 million pigs, I think. And it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around that. It's just such huge numbers. And
that it's every year. And
every year.
Yeah.
And the amount of land that is used just to graze cattle, apparently, it's like a third of the ice-free surface of the earth, ice-free land on the earth. And it's just crazy huge. And people, and I hadn't been either until I learned about it myself, that it takes up a huge amount of the Earth's resources.
I do want to ask you about integrating the animal rights message into the Green Party and your local, your Harris County Green Party. But before that, I don't want to forget to ask you, do you have, like, when you give these presentations or when you recommend people to look for further information, do you have a good go-to source that you tell them to check out?
Not so much. I really go look for the actual science, you know. For the nutrition, of course, I point everyone to, come on, I forgot, Dr. Greger, you know. And, huh?
Nutritionfacts.org.
Nutritionfacts, yes, thank you. I go there all the time. And for the animal rights stuff, you can go to a number of different, you know, animal rights groups. But for the environmental stuff, I keep it pretty hard science. The International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has a lot of good information about, you know, how much of the land is used for different industries. And so, yeah, just a mishmash of things. Unfortunately, I don't feel like I have one good source. Do you know of one?
Well, other than I recommend Cowspiracy for anyone that hasn't seen it. And then I usually say, look into Dr. Richard Oppenlander. He has all, you know, a lot of that data as well. But that's why I was wondering if you had any particular source that you would recommend.
No, not right now. I'm sorry, but those are two good sources. Yes.
Put you on the spot, but it came up. But so back to the question then about your Harris County Green Party and how can you talk about how you integrate that animal rights message and make the connections within the Green Party?
Yes. Well, you know, first of all, woman Bernadine Williams called me, and her sister Alma Williams is a long time animal rights activist, very long time, and so I guess Alma told Bernadine about me and what I do. And then Bernadine just contacted me over the phone or on Facebook or something and asked me if I wanted to start an animal rights caucus. And it sounded fascinating to me. And so I looked deeper into it. And I looked online about it. And then I found the two of you there. And it just, the position paper, it's like a, excuse me, my computer is trying to talk to me here. Remind me later. Yeah, your position paper is like an overview of everything animal rights. It's such a great resource to look at. And so I found that inspiring. And I found it very inspiring that the Green Party generally had adopted an animal rights plank for your platform, you know. And I had known about the Humane Party, whose presidential candidate, Clifton Roberts, I had on the show. And but that's a very narrow kind of party, you know. And I thought it was even better having animal rights incorporated into a better known party and a more diverse party.
Mm-hmm. Have you talked about, like, within the Harris County, have you, had these conversations with any non-vegans in the Green Party?
I brought it up at the last meeting, talked a little bit, and I've talked to Laura Palmer. We ran into each other at the Women's March here in Houston, and she was going to help me work things out, getting it set up in Texas. And apparently at the meeting I was at, there were 5 or 6 other vegans. So that was, I felt good about that. And, but that's about it. It's all very new, you know.
Well, I love that there is such an active vegan community, and really I think that's key. And to introduce the idea of political activism is really important to get people involved. And since this topic is about coalition building, I think the other thing I wanted to, have you share is maybe your experience working with other environmental groups, 350.org, Sierra Club, and you already mentioned the Humane Party, but, again, how you're building coalitions with this message of animal rights and agriculture.
Right. I just venture out, first of all, and find these groups. And the big hurdle is just to say something about veganism or saying something about animal agriculture or animal rights. Uh, a lot of people, there will be vegans in those groups, but they just don't want to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm good at saying things, like that. And I make a point, like when there's some discussion about, like someone brings up Alan Savory and how he has such wonderful ideas about grazing cattle to improve the soil. I'll come out and say, no, that's ridiculous. All the scientists say there's absolutely no proof that this is true, that there are some possibilities for carbon sequestration, but they're much smaller than anything that Alan Savory promotes. So I'll just come out and say stuff, or just me going to a meeting, an environmental meeting, and they're going around the room. I just say, hi, I'm Michael Battey. I'm with Vegan for Life. And now all of a sudden I'm the vegan in the environmental world here in Houston,
And yet, as you say, there are other, actually a significant number of other vegans in these groups, and even in the Green Party, and it seems they're reluctant to carry that identity. I mean, not just, it seems to be common with lots of political groups, the ecological groups, the environmental groups, and how do you find that others are willing to speak a little bit more because you are? I mean, that's what I'm finding locally, that as soon as one or two people speak, the others feel a little bit more comfortable. It's sort of, in some strange way, or maybe not so strange, it is kind of like being a part of a minority, and in one sense, part of an oppressed class, or we humans aren't the ones, we are actually the oppressors when it comes to animals. But those of us who are vegan are speaking for them, or amplifying their voice. I do think animals have a voice. And I think once that's heard, people become a little bit more courageous. So I'm curious, how are you finding the interaction?
It's generally good. Sometimes the first time I go to a new space, like last night, I went to an environmental justice group who's going to do the Chavez parade this year. And I mentioned that, I had a vegan organization, and this one socialist guy, he had a little chuckle, and because to him, I guess it's not hard politics, but it's probably because he doesn't realize how hard of politics it is. It really is a strong position to take politically. But I've lost track. Could you steer me back?
Well, you're actually what you said was a very good point, because in New York, it's funny. Like, as I mentioned back, that when I first ran, we were the first two vegetarians. Well, this year, our mayoral candidate was vegan, and our leading city council candidate is vegan. And both mentioned it. One got a mention in the Village Voice, their mayoral candidate, although they didn't cover anything he said about it. And I get the impression that was the issue with the reporter, not so much the candidate, who may have mentioned why he was vegan. And our lead city council candidate, who got nearly 30% of the vote, was quite vocal about his animal rights politics, and was endorsed by one of the larger state animal rights organizations, and it built a lot of connections, even though there was integrated with a lot of other issues. That's why I thought it was, when you brought up the Green Party and interconnections. But I'm curious, because it would, as Mary mentioned, a movie like Cowspiracy. And I think of organizations like 350.org. how do you find, let's say, the local members in 350 or Sierra Club? Are they willing, at least locally, to integrate that into the ecological message, the environmental message? Or?
There has been an effort to do that. I want to say Mike Huyak. I can't remember his name correctly, but that was in 2015. There was an effort to have a stronger message about, anti-grazing message, because they were still promoting this regenerative grazing kind of notion. But I have great relationships both with 350.org and with Sierra Club. I gave my general animal ag presentation at Sierra Club, and I gave a climate change one at 350.org. And I've interacted. Both of them are near vegans, actually. Both the leaders here locally, and especially the person at Sierra Club supports me a lot. She teaches at a private high school. I went there twice, and I don't know why it is, but and she always encourages me to speak up and get involved. And so, yeah, people were open, but Sierra Club generally is kind of old-fashioned, and there are a lot of people there who kind of dodge the issue, I'm afraid. But I'm glad to be able to go and interact with them. I'm very careful not to be an angry vegan, sometimes it creeps out, I'm afraid. But, I try to have good timing about when to bring it in to the conversation, and try not to be too prosecutorial, I should say, about the topics I'm discussing.
I just want to jump in for a minute for people that are listening in, because we have some comments that I want to get to, but we're with Michael Battey from the Houston area. He's with the Houston Green Party, and he has an organization called Vegan for Life, speaking about the coalition building between the animal rights movement and the Green Party and other environmental organizations as well. So I wanted to respond to some comments that are here. I think these were responses to what you were saying about to speak up and to say you're the vegan in the room and not ever be afraid of that. So we have a comment from Vivian saying it's about time and it makes absolute sense. Jacqueline says she's sharing this chat to other vegan groups, and she thinks it's awesome. Talking to students, educating the youth that are going to be our future is so important. Do you want to talk about, have you had any interactions like that with presentations, and what's your experience with that?
Yes. Well, like I said, I did 2 presentations at a high school. But Cesar Chavez High School here in Houston has started a vegan club, and they've had 2 vegan sort of after-school events where they prepare a lot of vegan food. The Houston Independent School District sends out a vegan chef who, and it's really a lot of fun. And we always, my group does a lot of tabling, and at these events, we've done it twice here at Chavez High School. We do pay-per-views, and you pay people $1 to watch a 4-minute factory farm video. And of course, the high school students, if it's $1, they'll do anything, So, but we get a lot of good responses, and the kids are really nice. And there's one student who I think is only a junior. Her name's Dexter Lara. Tonight, she's actually giving a animal rights presentation, actually an environmental presentation at the Sierra Club. I'm afraid I missed it because I had to be here. And so in my own way, I helped that get going a little bit, her connection with Sierra Club and stuff. And so, yeah, the high school students are great. they're getting active more than ever.
That's amazing. And it certainly helps to have a mentor that, like you, that they can go to for support and for the information. Really, it would be great to see that in every school around the country, to partner, local vegans, partner with your high schools, partner with the, youth organizations, and let them know that you're there to support them. But I do think that is a growing audience.
Yeah, it does get more complicated the younger the kids are, Like college kids, you can talk to like adults, you can interact with them however you want. But once you get into high schools, understandably, the institution is looking out for the kids, right? So you can't just informally interact with the students, right?
That truth they might need to be protected from, but yeah.
No, right.
I'm saying that facetiously.
Yes.
So other activism that you've done, you had recently an animal rights march, right?
Yes, that is true. It went very well. I didn't do a whole lot of planning. I just said, let's go to the Galleria, which is this big kind of fancy shopping mall. And it's where everyone does their marches, March Against Monsanto was there. When we were marching, there was this group of Iranians protesting against human rights issues, I believe it was. And, but 60 people showed up. We had a bunch of signs, we had megaphones, and we just kind of walked in a loop. We crossed the street and walked one block and crossed and came back, and everyone had a great time. For Houston, that's a good turnout, 60 people. And everyone had a good time. And the thing about this area is that there's a lot of vehicle traffic. And in New York and cities, like that, I know you had a vegan march on the street, but in Houston, that's a little harder to pull off. And so we stuck to the sidewalk. Maybe someday we'll graduate to the street. That's kind of a dream I have.
So still, the 60 people walking around that public space is great. And did you have any conversations? What were any reactions that you noticed?
Yes, the people actually walking on the sidewalk, sometimes they would ask questions and people would talk to them. Since I was the organizer, kind of my head was spinning, so I was, I wasn't in a position to relax and talk to passersby so much, but there was some of that as well, yes.
Right. Any other activism that you've been doing recently that you want to share?
Yeah, the big thing is the Pride Festival is really our big thing. It is huge in Houston. It's really, many tens of thousands of people. And our booth is just nonstop. And people come and we talk to them. They're often very moved. And they just hang out for a while, And I know it's not all the booths that are like that. Many of them people are sitting around doing nothing. But again, we did our pay-per-view, and now we have virtual reality too, and everybody wants to see that.
So which organization are you getting the pay-per-view and the virtual reality? What do you?
The virtual reality is from Animal Equality.
Okay.
They have a representative in Dallas who I interacted with. And the pay-per-view, we are sponsored by Veg Fund for that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of their thing at Veg Fund is pay-per-view.
Right.
And of course, we get donations because we give them $1 and then they put the $1 in the tip jar. So that kind of works well for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with the Pride Fest, are there any other, another audience that you can potentially be meeting and interacting with? Any other organizations, nonprofits besides that you've connected with and had success with?
At the Pride Festival?
Well, either at the festival itself or other festivals. Have you connected with other nonprofits or other groups?
Yes, a little bit, but at the festival, it's just going. And we, it's just nonstop. We don't have time to go to anyone else's booth, unfortunately. Yeah, we did 180 something pay-per-views, and one of our people with a clicker counted more than 800 people who were actually engaged at our booth, not just kind of peeked in, who actually talked with us at the booth. And so it's just crazy the whole time, you know.
Well, really, and that's just such a great idea whenever there is a festival, because people often say, oh, what an opportunity that, you know, to get the animal rights message, to get the vegan message to these other audiences. So that's great that you've done that in that venue.
Yeah, we've done it with we do go to this pet fest that is a little bit out of town and a little small, but you know, talk to people, pets. Then we go to the theme of, you know, why love one and eat the other.
Right.
And go ahead.
I'm curious about that because I'm involved with a lot of companion animal issues, and I must say I had underestimated, you know, the ability for the bridge to work. We found after one of our rallies, a woman there actually at the end of the rally said, "You have to go vegan," and she said, "How many people here are vegan?" You know, those of us who were there, you know, at the protest and rally and handing out, and about a third of the people there were vegan, and the others who weren't were almost apologetic because they got the connection. So I'm curious, what kind of response do you get? Because I think there's a perception that, well, pets. People only
a lot of these rescue people, it's spreading, you know, veganism amongst the rescue groups, you know. Real quickly, I see we don't have that much time left. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about my interaction with the other groups here in Houston. I think that's important. I mentioned Vegan Society of Peace, and they're great. They're a great place they have great place for vegans to go to, you know, and they do a lot of outward-facing stuff too. But when I formed Vegan for Life, that was kind of the key thing. You know, Vegan Society of Peace, they do a lot of the support for vegan stuff, you know, so we don't need to do that. We don't want to compete with that. And I'm happiest when we're just out in the world, you know, talking to people and spreading the message and answering their questions. And just in the last couple of years, all these other young groups have started out. We have kind of a PETA, a person who mostly does PETA stuff, people in Animal Save movement, people doing Anonymous for the Voiceless. I don't know if you've heard of that. And more and more people are just having more and more ideas of things to do. And so I run Vegan for Life, but I don't just do Vegan for Life activities. You know, if Anonymous for the Voiceless is doing something, I'll go there. If someone else has organized, you know, leafleting or some other kind of event at an outdoor occasion, I'll go to that too, you know. And that seems to be how this circle of 4 or 5 groups do things generally. We all go to each other's events. And I think I love that fluidity. But on the other hand, I'm just about the only person to go to these non-vegan organizations. And that's become kind of my specialty. If I didn't mention it, sometimes I brag on myself on Facebook, you know, and if I didn't do that, most vegans wouldn't have any idea that I did it or that anyone did it, you know. And so that's something I really, I feel like I'm breaking a little ground doing that.
I think all of it is so important. Every type of activism, that's what I always say. It's like, you know, whatever you feel comfortable doing yourself. Some people are more comfortable writing letters to the editor. Some people are comfortable talking one-on-one to their representatives. other people like yourself, I do the same thing. I give presentations at libraries and schools, and I'm comfortable more as an educator, and other people like doing the direct action type of activism. So I think all of it together certainly covers a lot of ground. There's no one right way of doing activism. Of course, there are some wrong ways, but there's no one right way. And I think it is, just really effective to have almost like all these bases covered, like you described, and especially to have that interaction among non-vegan groups so they can see that it's a strong community, it's a strong message, and to really normalize the concept of veganism is so important, which it sounds like you're doing in many ways.
Well, yes, I think Houston we're really starting to get our act together. We're doing so many protests and we're supporting each other really well. And I'm sure you've got a lot going up there in the Northeast. And just the movement generally is really taking off, I think.
Yeah, and so another point that I want to kind of address, and I know you say you're just getting into the Green Party developing a caucus, an animal rights caucus, but one of the things, our goal with the Animal Rights Committee is to have, a committee in every state so that people are working and connecting with their local groups. It may not be a whole group, it may just be one person in that state, but, I'm the one person in Connecticut that's doing it for the Green Party here. So, that's something, I don't know, do you have anything that you'd like to add just to kind of tell people what are some steps they might want to take, or some, ways to build those connections?
Well, personally, I'm coming into an existing dynamic, with the Harris County Green Party. There's a lot of great people, and they're all covering a lot of ground. The Green Party has taken on a lot of different issues, and these are not big groups. And I think Harris County has one of the biggest groups in the country, and it's not very big, really. And but so I'm kind of feeling my way through it, and finding out how far different people are willing to go with it, to participate in it, who is just open to discussions or not. I know Laura Palmer, the person in charge there right now, is at least open to discussing it and is willing to look into getting things going at a state level. So I just want to keep learning and keeping my nose on the grindstone there, and just seeing what comes up. I was so inspired by what the two of you have done. You just muscled it into existence, really, it seems. And especially the first people, it's this whole phenomenon of not wanting to speak up. You two really put yourself there in the game and spoke up, and you were, I'm sure, eloquent and polite about the whole thing, but you stood your ground. You stood your ground, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, so as you just described, it wasn't easy, but we were very determined. And one of the issues that we wanted to make sure was clear is that it was an animal rights committee, not an animal welfare committee, because we were not willing to make that compromise. We, forming it, Craig and I, we, came to that decision on our own that if it was going to come down to only passing being accepted as an animal welfare committee, we would rather not have it exist at all. So we were determined to stick with the animal rights. Certainly there's areas that need to go further than we have even, but we're kind of taking it from where we are right now with the Green Party and hoping to move people along through this process of education and I would say some persuasion. I wouldn't necessarily say it's being nice or polite, but respectful. And I think that's key as far as communication, that as vegans, I think we need to know that the message is strong. It will speak for itself, the reason why animals deserve to be treated equally and that they should be respected for themselves as individual sentient beings deserving of rights to exist free from our exploitation. That alone should be our message, and that we should not feel that needs to be compromised in any way. So I feel like it's just being direct and straight and assertive, and no need to be like tiptoeing around the message, and no need to be nice about things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Green Party had in its origins in this country a lot of ecofeminists who were also animal rights activists, because they felt they very much go together in terms of the vision of a cooperative society rather than one that's patriarchal. And there were battles in the Green Party over that, and you can actually see the conflict in the platform where there's a clear message against speciesism in the platform, and yet there's a lot of welfareism. And interesting that apparently the UK went through that also, because Ronnie Lee, who's one of the original co-founders of Animal Liberation Front, eventually formed the equivalent preceded what we did here, called Greens for Animal Protection. And he also felt it was important to be part of an integrated party to do that. And when we formed the Animal Rights Committee, one of their members contacted me on Facebook, and he said, "It's so great that you got to call it Animal Rights," because that was one of the battles they had there. And this is, with people like Ronnie Lee behind them, and they still couldn't, it became Animal Protection. So this is a battle. It's not just us here. I think it's a global issue amongst Greens and in politics. So like the coalition building has to happen from within and externally, and bring back to the integrated, or is what I remember reading in the original language of the Green Party that I saw, the web of life, this whole interaction. And I think it's great what you're doing in Houston, because there's all these outposts, and this is kind of what excites us about things like the Animal Rights Committee, is that as some of us come forward, more people come forward and start doing it, and I think we'll get back to that integrated vision as people like yourself do what you do. So I'm encouraged to hear what you're doing in Houston.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, I think, but I wanted to give a shout out to Carol Burris. I think she might have put up a message there, but she runs one of the Unitarian churches, UU churches here in Houston. We have First UU, and we have, oh gosh, my memory's failing me again, another great UU. They have vegan potlucks. They're just fantastic. UU Church does all kinds of great things, and there are certainly a lot of vegans in the UU Church, and they do a lot of great activism on their own.
Yeah. I'm taking a minute to look at some comments. I was looking online, for some reason my screen froze, so now I'm trying to read my phone. But thank you everyone for listening in. There's comments from Jacqueline, from Elaine, from Bob, Joshua. So sorry for not getting to all these sooner, but Jacqueline says she's interested in more about the virtual reality and the group Animal Equality. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I believe the president of that organization lives in Europe somewhere, in England. Do you know? But they do have an office here. A woman named Dane Charbonneau runs it, and you just contact her, and you have to, meet a few requirements. But she was very helpful, and they have fantastic. They have 4 different VR videos, so to speak, and I think they were done in Mexico, because it's probably easier to get access to the inside of a slaughterhouse. They're all in slaughterhouses, and it's nothing is exaggerated. The slaughterhouses are clean. The workers, you see them, they're not freaked out or anything. They're joking around with each other, but still you're seeing the blood flow. You're seeing them shock the pigs, and then watching them slit their necks and things. and they have great narrators and too. But so if you have a plan and you can get the right equipment, Animal Equality, I won't say will, but they might be willing to support you with the videos.
That's good to know. So anyone doing local activism, that might be a way to go. Mm-hmm. So I don't see any other questions, but again, comments saying thank you for this information, for bridging that connection between the organizations and veganism with Vegan for Life. Let's see. And just another comment from Jacqueline about coming to the Green Party as a vegan out of necessity and not finding that kind of, I think, support from the Democratic Party, but out of necessity to save the planet, essentially. I agree with that. And then the importance of grassroots organization from the Green Party. And really, I think that's what this is all about, is what we're doing, is really connecting on an individual level. I just saw Angela Davis speak a week ago at the University of Hartford, and she said some people think the movements are built with those big parades and those big marches, which are very invigorating, but she said really movements are built one-on-one through conversations, through critical thinking, and through those interactions we have with people on a daily basis, which it sounds like everything that you're doing. And then speaking of which, somebody says, Houston Animal Save, the next protest will be on Saturday.
Oh, great. Yes, I think I know who that person is, as a matter of fact. Oh, that's great. Yes.
So yeah, maybe that. Any events that you have coming, speaking the opposite of what I just said, but any events that you'd like to talk about that people should get involved with or that should be aware of?
You know, things pop up all the time. Last night I went to a meeting to organize the next Cesar Chavez parade. It was a very good meeting. It's going to be in March, and my group has gone there every year. We've been in existence. This will be our 4th time to go. We're a pretty new group. And interestingly, Chavez himself was vegan,
right?
At least part of his life. That gives us kind of an in on the march, and everyone it's you know, I wouldn't say a super poor neighborhood, but a modest neighborhood financially. And people are just so nice. We leaflet all over. We made a special leaflet that you print out. One side's English and one side's Spanish about Chavez was vegan, you know. And I just really get excited about this march. I hope it gets bigger every year. It's been kind of dwindling, and this year they want to make it a little more political. And have fewer politicians. Usually they have a lot of politicians lined up and they want to talk forever. But so we have a lot of Latinos here in Houston and a lot of vegan Latinos who are my friends and acquaintances. And I would just love to have a lot of them go to this Chavez parade and show both their support for representation of the Latino community and also, you know, speaking for veganism and animal rights. So that's our next big event. And I'm sure something else is going to jump in there, as it always does. But yeah, I have big hopes for this parade.
That sounds great. So if anyone wanted to join you, how can they get in touch with you? What would you say is the best way?
You can contact me at Michael at vegan-for-life.org.
Okay, so vegan-for the number?
No, F-O-R.
Okay, F-O-R, right. Okay. And so thank you very much, Michael Battey from Vegan for Life, from the Houston area, Houston Vegan Society. And, you know, it's been an excellent evening with conversation. Craig, do you want to tell people how they can find out more about the live stream, the Animal Rights Committee, and if they missed this presentation, what they can do?
Yes, this presentation is recorded. You'll be able to find it right here on the Green Party Animal Rights Facebook page, and there will be links going up. And to find out more about the Green Party Animal Rights Committee, just follow the page, and we'll be posting things that the committee does, our responses to things in the news, and through that you can find out about the committee and work towards setting up your own local equivalent, much as Michael is doing here.
Great.
Well, thank you for listening in, everybody. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Michael. And hopefully we'll be in touch, and feel free to keep posting comments. We'll check them and respond to any comments or questions after this live stream is done.
And thank you, and have a good night.